Hi, I'm Stuart Brooker, and just to be honest, this is probably about my take 20. This is probably one of the most important videos that I've done in my life, and to be honest, not really liking talking to the camera. I'd rather talk to people face to face. However, due to the time constraints we have for this election, I need to get this message out, far and wide, and putting it down in a post in text just doesn't get the right feeling for me. So I'm not your average, independent. I don't run on fringe issues. I do believe in a balanced approach. I have been trained as a problem solver in multinationals such as Accenture, CSC, Unisys, and a big company called Oracle, very big in databases. That was actually my first job. I've had clients such as Optus, BlueScope Steel, Australian Tax Office, and the Department of Immigration. I've run up to teams of 100 people, and I've managed budgets over $14 million. So I know how business operates, and also know how government operates. I was called in and my team was called in. I was lucky to have a team that were experts in their field from all over the world to help me solve these issues. And we were called in when everyone else had been through all their troubleshooting and had pretty much given up on the issue. So we were kind of the last line before, the customers, often would even redesign a system, redesign their processes. So we went in and we were pretty successful in fixing most of the stuff that we're engaged with. And these range from IT problems to people recruitment problems to process problems. Basically, our scope was there's an issue, we needed to find what was causing the issues, and then we'd go back to the managers or the organisation to let them know what needed to be fixed. So our scope was quite big. It didn't matter if it was people, processes, IT systems, the management themselves, which was always an interesting conversation when I had to go back to the manager that had contracted us in and let them know they were actually the issue. The staff knew what the problem was, they just weren't being listened by their management or upper management to get the resources they need to actually fix it. Past 8 years, I've actually been a dad. It was very important for us that one of us were at home to look after the kids, be there before school and after school, sports, also volunteer at their school to be part of their life. We don't believe we should leave it to the system to raise our kids. We should be very active in educating them, teaching them the right way to act in society and prepare them, going forward. Because when it comes down to it, it doesn't matter what I do in my life to improve society. If we're not passing that on to the future generations, then it can quickly deteriorate. So that's been my most rewarding career, and I love it. How it came about is when we moved to the Gold Coast, the wife and I were applying for jobs. She was lucky to get the job first, and I was lucky enough that enabled me to be the stay-at-home dad and look after the kids. So that's absolutely been brilliant. I've also managed a PCYC for about 6 months. So that's a program that I really believe in. I saw the impact it had of troubled youth being able to have somewhere to come and people to support them and set them back on the right path. So this is something I'm really passionate about, to see Coomera, which has some of the biggest youth population, get a PCYC up here on the Northern Gold Coast. Michael Crandon has been trying to get this done with the community for, I think, nearly a decade now, and we still haven't had any level of government commit to that, which is a shame. To me, it's a no-brainer. We need to get it done. I've also driven for Authorised, one of their vans, which is a non-profit which goes and collects food waste and reallocates it to people in need. They do cook-ups. It's a brilliant organisation. If you haven't heard of them, go and look up Authorised. I've also worked in community radio. I did radio programs with youth from one of the local high schools. We did programs, heavy metal programs, right to a program called Controversial Corner, where the kids picked the topic and they picked which side to argue, and I had to argue the opposite side. So that was really interesting. yeah, was a lot of fun, and it's probably still, if you Googled my name and Valley FM, you could find some of the old recordings. I understand that we need programs like Common Ground, which is a program which takes people that are in homelessness and moves them through a process which finds them accommodation, but also supports them getting a job and getting skills so they then can get their own accommodation. And that frees up space in the program for the next people. I don't believe that we should just give handouts, which doesn't really prepare the person, to be self-sustainable. I don't think that's good from an economics point of view. And I don't think it's really good for the person's, self-esteem. We need programs to help support them, fill any gaps they've got in skills, or, so they can be part of society, be that getting a job or volunteering, or so that their mental health doesn't suffer, because it can be quite isolating when you don't have enough money to do anything but, pay for your accommodation or pay for your food, or even worse, that you can't even do that. So you end up, on the street. So supporting programs that supports them into becoming self-sufficient. And then with the Common Ground, they actually mentor the next people that come through the program. So gives that experience, lived experience, to translate how to get from a bad situation, into a good situation, which is brilliant. And it reminds me of the old proverb, give a man a fish and they'll eat for a day, teach them how to fish and they'll feed themselves for a lifetime. And I think that wraps up in the sort of policies and programs that I look to support to make sure we get long-term value. My unique background, that I've just described, and this is just a short summary, in both the community work and the corporate world, allows me to understand the issues from the front line. And I'm very good at listening to people on the front line from what I've been trained at, because they're the ones that know what needs to be done. And as I explained earlier, it's often the management or the bureaucracy that try and provide a solution from the top down to the bottom is where we have issues. If you actually go and talk to the people that are dealing with these issues day to day, they often know what needs to be done. It's just that gets lost in translation, going through the bureaucracy. So when I'm learning about an issue, I try and go out there and actually volunteer with the people that are doing this day in, day out. Over the next couple of weeks, I'm actually going to a place in Southport that feed the homeless, because I want to learn more about the issues on the Gold Coast around that area. And really there's no way to do that by reading books or reports or research. You need to go and actually see it first, so then you can put that research into context. So I'm looking forward to that. And the last bit, which I'll finish up with, is I do know it's scary to vote for an independent. It's very difficult for people to change what they've voted for the last 10 or 20 years. The good news is that with this by-election is it doesn't matter who you vote for, you're not going to change the government, okay? But what you can do is make a positive change to make sure the Fadden area gets the money and the resources that it needs. We've already seen that in the crossbench in the Senate, where there's lots of independents or minor parties, we're seeing very positive change, because the big parties, LNP and Labor, have to negotiate with people that are really in touch, with their local electorate, and they put the people before the party first. So we're seeing really positive policy coming out, where because the majors do have to negotiate, they have to give more than what they would have if they could just pass it through with a majority, vote through the Senate. So that's a good sign. So independents are not the boogeyman. They're not. They don't disrupt the process. I think they create a really good independent review and transparency into the policies that the big parties are putting through, and we get that extra out of them, which can only benefit, the people in the electorate. The other thing too is we've only got 2 years until the next general election. Because this is a by-election, there's only 2 years to go. So if you're not happy with my performance, in 2 years' time, you can vote me out. The added bonus of that is if we have an independent in this electorate in 2 years' time, can you imagine the amount of money LNP and Labor are going to be throwing at this electorate to try and get rid of me? Now, if you're happy with me, sweet, you vote me in again. We're still going to get a lot of that money thrown at us, and I can make sure they adhere to those promises, as an independent from both sides of LNP and Labor. Now, just to give you an indication of the impact of being a marginal seat or a seat that's not held by the majors, is marginal seats got anywhere between 300 million and 800 million worth of promises last federal election. Fadden, we only got promised $58 million in promises from LNP and only $600,000 worth of promises from Labor. So there's a big difference when you're a safe seat like we are now. The current margin is 10%, to if you've only got a what they call a marginal seat, which is under sort of 6%. The marginal seats get a lot more love from the majors, so that's a bonus as well. Okay, so you really haven't got much to lose. So I appreciate your time. If you want to know more, my phone is available. It's 0490540050. As I said, this was probably one of the most important videos I've ever made, but I do prefer to talk to people in person, because there's so many issues out there, and every person has a different perspective on what's important in their life. So I'd love to discuss it with you. So that number is 0490540050. Thank you for your time.